Welcome to Live Like an Acrobat. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto, two-time World Acrobatic Gymnastics Champion, USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame member, and Cirque artist. I'm also an advocate for rain. On each episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, I discuss acro handstanding in terms of training tips, coaching, and I explore circus and acrobatic gymnastics competitive life as I have lived it from past to current, and I theorize on what the future may bring in these fields. On each episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, I will bring you insight through my own experiences, which are rooted in a perspective built on social justice advocacy and how these important issues continue to intersect between the circus arts and acrobatics competitive worlds at large. On each episode, I have the pleasure of discussing these various narratives with a variety of fascinating special guests. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. Please consider a donation to encourage the continuation and evolution of this podcast. The details of how to donate are located in the show notes. Please make sure to check out the Circuspreneur for extended conversations and interactive content of each episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. On this episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, I have the delightful pleasure of interviewing aerialist Summer Lacy. As we make our way through an unprecedented hot summer, I wanted to bring us into this episode featuring the Summer Lacy with a nod to another very important social justice issue that is at the forefront of our lives at this moment in time. And that, as Childish Gambino in this song so poetically flows about, is the threat of global warming. As we close out the summer with summer, I wanted us all to bring our attention and bring our focus back to another threat against the prolonged existence on this planet, and that even in the midst of so many issues that we know need our immediate attention, let's not forget, why does it so consistently feel like summer? My conversation with the beautiful Summer Lacy comes on the heels of the newly appointed running mate of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, who is the first, which this continues to be controversial, Black/South Asian American female VP pick in history. She is a woman of color. She is of Jamaican descent. She is Jamaican American. She is so many things, and I felt that it was important to include all of those sentiments in this episode, specifically, of course, because Summer Lacy is a beautiful Black woman. I'm actually not sure about the heritage of Summer. I myself have done a little bit of DNA backgrounding, and I am part Nigerian, part Sierra Leonean, part Scandinavian, part Irish, part Scottish, Welsh. And of course, there is still some controversy around how accurate those systems are, but that is the most traceable information that I have at this point for myself. So it's a fascinating topic. For me, I think the most important thing that I look at within that conversation is the nuances, again, of what it means to be a Black woman in the world and in America. For me, the most important aspect of Kamala Harris is how the world sees her in any instance of her life, and owning back to the fact that if she were ever having any encounter in any way in her life, that she would be regarded very much as a Black woman. They would not take into account of she's part Jamaican, she's part Indian, she's part this, she's part that. And I felt like that's a very important thing to remind listeners, that we know that we're multidimensional. And this is also, too, not to minimize the multifaceted aspects of Kamala Harris's background. I think that they should all be celebrated. The fact that her father is Jamaican, the fact that her mother is from India, her story is wild. And I think that Summer Lacy, who is a very powerful Black woman, would appreciate this introduction with the inclusion of Kamala Harris, because it's so historic. And it's more historic in what Kamala Harris represents. And we know that this is a dire time, and I find that the universe is smiling down upon us, because what better to lead us out of such chaos than the voice and the presence of a Black woman. So I segue into my amazing conversation with Summer Lacy, where you will leave inspired, hopeful, positive. Summer is such a light. And it reminds me of what people are feeling like now for the first time in a very long time. The thing that I felt for the first time in a very long time with the presence of Kamala Harris on this national, international stage and vying for the White House is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that sentiment can't be shared by more people that I know that I don't know. It's the magic during such times. It's the glimpse of hope. And that's what I felt in talking to Summer Lacy about her circus career, about her circus life, about her many facets that she explores as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, as a circuspreneur. And you'll leave hopeful. So to add hope to hope, please allow me to introduce my special guest, Summer Lacy. As she flies through the air, tumbles from breathtaking heights, and glides across the stage with consummate control, Summer Lacy dares her captive audiences to imagine the impossible. Her story, one of an unlikely rising star in the aerial dance world, is equally inspiring. She exists as a testament to imagination, perseverance, and determination. Specializing in aerial chains, Lyra, dance trapeze, and silks, Summer expresses her mission statement through her art: stand up, stand out, and create something beautiful. As Summer built a satisfying career in graphic design, she made time through the years to explore her love of gymnastics. With the discovery that a circus arts class was available as an elective at her university, Summer decided to take a chance on the sport and discovered she loved this newfound area of artistic expression. After graduation, Summer continued her education at regional circus schools and eventually became an instructor herself. As her talents in design took her to great heights, including stints at famed label Earache Records and the comic book institution Marvel Entertainment, her tenacity in the aerial world paid off. It was clear that Summer had the potential to take to the stage professionally. With that, the dreams she'd previously thought far-fetched were within reach. She performed her debut set in 2007 and rapidly became a sensation in the aerial community.
In 2012, Summer's appearances on the primetime competition show America's Got Talent went viral and earned her a national following overnight. Judge Howie Mandel, impressed by her aerial chains and Lyra acts, was prompted to describe her as both dangerous and very original. Since then, Summer has been seen in flight around the world, working internationally with the Duzol Dance Company, Constellation Moving Company, and Loki Circus Theater. She's made her mark in the New York City theater scene as a featured performer in Circus Abyssinia's acclaimed 2018 exhibition Ethiopian Dreams and the hit off-Broadway variety show La Soirée. Other appearances include The Economist magazine's World in 2013 Gala, the 2018 Apollo Theater Spring Gala, and sharing the stage with Grammy Award-winning recording artist Tamela Mann and the Winans. Summer is one-third of La Cage Trio, a beloved aerial cage troupe known for uniquely combining strength and grace, and has expanded her talents to include modeling, including a spectacular aerial fashion display honoring designer Rick Owens at the 2017 CFDA Fashion Awards. In addition to performing, Summer is a resident instructor at Circus Warehouse and Body and Pole in New York City, imparting her knowledge to aspiring circus stars alongside the industry's best. She is also the proprietor and creative director for Ecel Creative, a thriving design business and an extension of her mission to inspire with the power of art. Please welcome Summer Lacy to the show. Hi, Summer. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today. How are you?
I am doing well, Shenea. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be part of your amazing podcast, and I am so appreciative of all that you are doing in this space to uplift, our voices and make a difference in the world of gymnastics and circus and performance.
Thank you so much, Summer. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm honored, and that means so much to me. Summer, starting with your own mission statement, please share with listeners what it means in the arts to stand up, stand out, and create something beautiful.
For me, I have always been kind of a unique individual. I've always kind of stood out throughout every kind of level of my life, whether it's when I was growing up as a child, going through college, and then finally finding circus. So for me, the idea of always being true to yourself has kind of been part of just who I am as a person, and it's really allowed me to do and find success in the things that I do. And I like to share that experience with other people in the way that I teach, as well as the way that I perform, with the idea of being able to showcase something that is different, and that being the sell point or the great thing about it. As far as creating something beautiful, that is also something that comes from the heart in terms of creating beautiful art, like visual art, or creating beautiful performance art, or even just finding beauty in things as simple as the way you train and build your body. So for me, though, that mission statement is just something that really kind of keeps me going, regardless of whether I am doing circus, whether I am doing fitness or doing visual arts or doing music. Like all of it kind of encompasses the idea of, don't be afraid to stand out. Don't be afraid to be yourself.
Beautiful, Summer. Thank you. Summer, Before coming onto the show, I asked you for a statement on how you currently see the world, and in response, you had these very inspiring words to share. You said, "I've been thinking a lot about how to be more compassionate and part of a more compassionate society. I wear a mask when I'm out because that's what experts recommend, and it's the best way for me to protect others. COVID is obviously affecting everyone, but it's also drawing pretty stark lines between people. We see the same thing with the social movements around Black Lives Matter and the opposition to police brutality and racial oppression. How can I be a part of a more compassionate world where people take care of each other, not just in a crisis, but in general? With everything going on right now, my worldview has been heavily focused on gratitude. It's been an extremely challenging year for everyone, me included, and I make a daily practice of thinking of the things I'm grateful for. There's food in the refrigerator, I'm healthy. These are little things to some people, but we shouldn't take them for granted. I have been going to shows and concerts my whole life, and that has just stopped. Important things you assume are always going to be there. Things tied to livelihood and identity have come to a screeching halt. But despite all of that, it's important to be grateful for what we do have, and grateful that one day this will all be behind us. Compassion and gratitude are keys to a more harmonious world." I just love this, Summer. It's so inspiring. Does it bring something up inside of you, hearing it out loud and recited for you?
Yeah, it does. It's, I almost feel something like deep in my chest. But it is something that I really truly believe. And, even right now with all that's going on in the world, like I feel relatively optimistic. And I think part of it is because of having gratitude for the things that I have or the people that I can help, and having compassion for people who are struggling. And even despite losing a whole lot of everything, I still have something to give, and I still have something to be thankful for.
Yes. Thank you for reminding us to continue to focus on gratitude, because we know by focusing on gratitude, everything continues to expand in a very gracious way. So thank you, Summer.
Of course. I'm just glad to kind of try to spread some positive words and positivity, during our current climate.
Beautiful. Summer, what do you think and how do you feel about the new powerful dialogues occurring within the circus arts world regarding racial bias and racial discrimination? As you yourself are a BIPOC artist, have you felt the strain of being a BIPOC artist beginning as a circus student and evolving into the professional realm?
It's an interesting question, at least for me in particular. For me, I feel like I kind of started into circus a little bit late in the game. So in terms of like feeling something very specific as soon as I started, wasn't necessarily the case. I guess I kind of feel more like my experience in terms of having things happen to me specifically because of the color of my skin has often been more like microaggressions, smaller sort of situations. So, I when I started, I didn't even necessarily kind of think of that as part of my identity. I've always defined myself through the things that I do. Like I'm an aerialist, I'm a coach, I'm an art director, I'm a music lover, etc. And I often find that, the idea of Black aerialist or Black coach or having that description kind of being part of the identity was often a disqualifier. And I always wanted to be seen as a great aerialist and not necessarily good for a Black person or, or just a Black aerialist as opposed to being considered as part of the whole. And I guess that is why I've always, and this is where how it actually has affected me comes in, because I've always felt like I had to go the extra mile or work extra hard and be better than the best just to be taken seriously in the things that I do. And honestly, it does have a long-term effect in the fact that I often feel like I have to live up to unrealistic standards of success. And it's only recently, in the light of all that's kind of come to light in the last few months, that I have equated that mindset to the fact that it was harder for me to succeed in my body because of things that I didn't have control over, like the color of my skin. At the time, you're just part of a thing, and I have always been I've always been a bit of an outsider, and, most of my work and leisure activities have taken place in very white and very male spaces. And I actively choose to exist in those spaces because of my love for the art. And often I kind of just ignore or don't even realize that there are these racist and misogynist things that I actually have experienced in my time as a, circus performer, and, even through the beginning of my training. I guess I've just, I'm trying to figure out a nice way to kind of like end this thought. But I guess in terms of how it's affected me, it's been more kind of what I would say on the subdermal level, as opposed to things that I feel like were a direct thing that happened to me because of. They're always kind of like, I didn't get that gig, or I only tend to get hired for these particular things, or I've been always very particular about my lines and my feet, and, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Summer. Summer, to continue on, you were recently interviewed by Esquire magazine about your current views on the circus arts, which is simply fantastic, especially because it is such a widely known magazine and on the pulse of pop culture. Please share what you expressed in the interview and elaborate on if your perspective has changed at all since giving the interview.
So that article was specifically kind of addressing and speaking to the effects of the pandemic on the circus and sideshow industry. In terms of my thoughts and feelings about the effects, it pretty much stayed the same. Everybody is taking a hit in terms of like work, from circus to Broadway to live music venues. And there's a lot of like big question marks over like, what is the industry going to look like, later down the line? What are we going to do for our livelihoods, and how are we going to pay our bills until then? I spend a lot of time trying not to overthink things and just kind of let things happen the way they're going to happen. Right now everything is shut down and there's nothing happening. But, the nice thing in the arts is, in times of crisis, there's often a new renaissance that blossoms, and art comes out of the terrible things that have been happening. And it's interesting already to see how people are using digital media and live and performances live, but via the internet, as well as like online classes, and how there's been a new connection that way. Granted, you'll never quite get the same experience as you would if you were performing or seeing a live show. There's something about that connection with the physical audience that really makes live performance what it is. But, I feel it's it feels like it's going to be a hard road now. And I do feel optimistic about the future. And it's just a matter of seeing how that future will be different when everything opens up again.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I totally agree with everything that you just downloaded in that response, Summer. Summer, as a circus artist and contestant on America's Got Talent, where Howie Mandel just loved and adored you, what was your experience like competing as a reality show contestant? I myself had 2 stints on the show, and both were very different. What can you share with listeners? And what do you think about Gabrielle Union's recent claims that there was a tremendous racial bias within the AGT on-set environment? I've always admired Gabrielle Union for being so raw and honest about her sexual assault as a young adult. She was way ahead of the Me Too conversation, and she's been telling her story for a long time. So I was obviously very attuned to when she came out with her own stories. It was offset by the fact that she was fired from AGT. Do you have any comments about that? And please share about your own amazingly fantastic experience I think that you had on AGT from what I saw and how you were regarded on the show.
Well, AGT was definitely a interesting experience. It's a reality TV show and it's a competition. And I kind of went into it with the idea of like trying something new, getting myself out there, and just like seeing what opportunities can build out of it. As far as like competition goes, I'm generally not the most quote unquote competitive of people. Like that's honestly why I actually gravitated more towards performance than like sport. But I actually had a great experience. Like the people around me that I met, the other contestants were all so very like warm and giving, and everybody had these amazing talents. And, I actually like kept in touch with a few of the people that I had met on that show. In terms of like, being on stage, it was actually great to be able to like showcase my work. I was, of course, always a little bit nervous because the one thing that, could always happen is they could hate my act and think it's terrible and it will be on TV forever. But I'm really fortunate that they, enjoyed my performance and, brought me back to perform again on, in their Vegas round. So I really appreciate my experience on that show in terms of just like what it's like, being on set. It's just a lot of sitting around and waiting for your, turn to go up there. In terms of your comments of Gabrielle Union, I actually don't know anything about it. I don't, unfortunately, don't have a comment because I'm not actually sure what the story is on that. I did AGT in 2012, I believe. And honestly, I haven't really kept up. I haven't really watched the show since I've been on it. I've known a few people who've been on it, and I've caught a few episodes here and there. But in terms of things that have happened on that show, I wouldn't be surprised that there are those issues for sure. But I unfortunately can't speak with any, expertise or authority on it.
On this Stand for the Cause pause, Summer Lacy, after the recording of this episode, wanted to do some more digging into the situation involving Gabrielle Union and her time on AGT. Summer wanted to include, as an extension of her original comments, that she is in full support of Gabrielle Union, and she commends Gabrielle for speaking up about her experience as a successful yet marginalized actor and on the toxicity on AGT and lack of inclusion in Hollywood. Summer Lacy stands with Gabrielle Union. And on a more positive note about AGT's current season, Bello Knock and his daughter Annalise, he is the iconic clown from Ringling Brothers. For listeners who are not familiar with Bello, you have seen Bello with his iconic high top hairstyle that I know only one performer that I've ever met in my years of circus has seen Bello without his iconic hairstyle backstage. I can't imagine. And I say this because I have met Bello in person and spoken with him and been with him, and he is a lovely human being. And I imagine his daughter Annalise to being a beautiful extension of her father. They are competing on this season of AGT, and so if there is any silver lining amidst the toxicity of such environments, it's that there are those that are of circus past that continue to bring us the ever consistency of what we love about circus, and reminding us that it's still here, that the characters that are responsible for making circus what it is today are still in our midst, and we still can celebrate them. And I think it's so important to celebrate them as they still are on the stage and putting their work and their art and their experiences out into the ever-changing narratives that we find ourselves existing in as circus artists. So if AGT is one of your shows, tune into the season and support Bello and his daughter Annalise. Bello and Annalise Knock are American Daredevil clowns and circus performers. For more info on their upcoming run on AGT, visit circusdoc.com for more details. And now, back to my conversation with the loveliest Summer Lacy. Thank you for that, Summer. And I feel like my experience was in many ways on AGT, similar to yours. And I always love to hear artists speak about their experience on reality TV shows, because I always say that it's not for the faint of heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Summer, Circus Warehouse is a great circus facility. I've been just once while auditioning for the Broadway show Pippin. How has being an aerial instructor at Circus Warehouse been affected during the pandemic? Are you back in the studio? How has Circus Warehouse continued to pivot during this time? And can you tell us about your experiences as an instructor with Circus Warehouse?
Well, Circus Warehouse is basically my second home. I've been there since day one as an instructor, and I've always felt a part of the team included. I've always felt, again, like the people there are basically my family, which is something that like not many people can say about, their places of work. So it is been a very hard thing to kind of wrap around the fact that The pandemic has really hit the warehouse very hard. At the moment, we are without a space. So we weren't able to stay in our location that was in Long Island City. So at the moment, we are in a flux of trying to find a new space and then figuring out how to reinvent, Circus Warehouse in its new space, in the new world that we're about to find ourselves in. So I do feel, again, optimistic about the possibilities. And it's a family affair. So, I'm doing everything I can to help support the warehouse, and Susie Winson, who is the director of the school, amazing person. And yeah, I love teaching there. I've been teaching there for so long. We've had so many amazing students come in, both recreational and professional. We have an amazing professional training program that has put many students who have gone through the program have, working successful circus careers. I've worked with some of the major circus companies. So I definitely feel very proud about that, to have been a part of it. And I am definitely a little heartbroken about the fact that, the space as I've known it is not going to be there when, it's not going to be the same. I'm not going to say it's not going to be the same. So, it is good to know that, like, Circus Warehouse isn't just the pile of bricks of that one space, but it is the instructors, it is the students, it is the environment. So I think that that's going to continue to live on regardless of where we are and what exactly we're doing.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm also, again, very inspired to know that Circus Warehouse will continue to evolve and continue to rise even bigger and better than it was before. And I feel it's what you say is that it's the soul of Circus Warehouse and not conducive or restricted to a physical space. So you embody the soul of Circus Warehouse, as do all the other instructors there. And I just send you continued ease and grace as your space between your collective continues to evolve and find its new grounds, so to speak, getting through all of this, Summer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Summer, as an aerialist instructor, what is your perspective on giving conducive training and adapting to unique circumstances? What is your biggest ongoing challenge as an instructor? What are students' biggest needs when learning the aerial arts?
So I would say in a time where people aren't able to, be with each other physically, probably the lack of that physical connection definitely is one of the main factors that kind of makes things a little bit difficult. So it's like learning how to have that connection still, but be able to do it either online or through some other, socially distanced means. So for me, I've been doing classes over Zoom, and I've been just basically promoting them on my Instagram page, and I've mainly kind of set it up as a means to not have a complete stop in the training for students that I've been working with for years, right? You have this break, you have this routine, that you go to, and I know a number of people, who may not be, aiming to be professionals, actually come to class as their like meditative, like step out of their world, get over some of the bad things or, the stresses of their job. And they come to class and they train, and it is a thing that like helps them get through their week and get through their lives. So, I chose to make sure to keep some sort of connection to that and also connection to the physical body so that you're able to keep up in some way, shape, or form with the habits and the muscle building that we were building previously, and also to just kind of help inform the body in a different way than when you actually have the aerial equipment. So a lot of what I do in like my grounded aerial conditioning class are ground-based drills specifically geared towards things that you would do in aerial. So things that are going to help you with your inversions, things that will help you with your meat hook, things that will, help you with your knee hangs, like specific drills and just a good overall foundation so that when you come back, you're not coming back at zero.
Yes, that's so important. And I continue also too to support you as a coach through Zoom, as I am myself as well.
Yeah.
Finding the space and adapting and giving your students everything that you have and more, because I know for the aerial community, it's even more daunting. As a hand balancer, I have the space. I can adapt in a much easier way because I'm not in the air, and it's definitely not lost on me in communicating with the aerial community that you guys have a different kind of mountain to climb. And so I just applaud you, Summer, for figuring out that innovation during these times to maintain structure, to maintain good conditioning, good classes, growth, maintaining technique. And I can imagine it's not easy, but I'm sure that you make it look easy.
And the other side of it too is everybody's going through so many different things. Even for myself, like dealing with COVID, dealing with people I know getting sick, dealing with trying to like reconcile, whether I'll have a job or a career after all of this, and even having that mental and physical energy to even do anything physical. So like my first few weeks of, the pandemic and the shutdown, like it was actually a little bit hard for me to like have the energy to actually even get up and do any physical activity and conditioning and any of that. So honestly, it's been a gift to me from my students to be able to teach class, because like I'll teach class and I'll do it with them, you know what I mean? Which isn't necessarily the case when I was doing classes, when I was doing, in-person classes. So it's like, it's been a good way for me to connect back with why I need to do what I do and why I do what I do and why it's important to have that physical activity. So it's been almost not necessarily like I need to teach these classes and do these things because I need to like work, more than it's been like it's a support for my students, but it's also been a big, support for me as a person to be able to do it as well.
I totally understand that, and I feel the same. I feel very privileged, and that is a nice segue into my next question for you, Summer. What do you love most about the aerial arts? What drew you to take flight day in and day out? And do you feel cautious performing in so many different spaces, as it is a high-risk specialty and must be securely operated by experienced, trained professionals? Do you feel it's becoming easier in the circus arts for aerialists to be put in harm's way?
Okay. I think there's two parts of that question. Just repeat the first part again.
What do you love most about the aerial arts, and what drew you to take flight day in and day out? And do you feel cautious performing in so many different spaces?
So, I'm trying to think of exactly what drew me to aerial arts in the first place. And I'm not necessarily sure if it was one particular thing, but, it started out as, I always had a love for gymnastics when I was younger. I didn't do a whole lot of it because it was an expensive sport to partake in on a serious level. So I used to do it as like an extracurricular thing, like on Saturdays, and it was just something I really enjoyed. Like enjoyed flipping and being able to go on the uneven bars and balance beam and all that stuff. So when I wasn't able to do that anymore, there was this whole gap of time that passed until I got to college, and I found circus arts there. So they had a circus skills class, and that was the first time I was introduced to the trapeze, the static trapeze. They had one apparatus, and it was the static trapeze, and I just gravitated to it, and I would try to learn new things and grow. And when I wanted to learn more, I tried to seek out classes and training outside of my college. And that's kind of how I began my, descent into the circus world. And it just was kind of like a natural build. And at the time, I just loved doing it. I didn't really have an intention to be a professional performer or teach professionally. I just knew that I liked what I was doing. And if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it well, like professional level. I just wanted to be that good, and then I found myself slowly enjoying performing, and then I performed more. I started teaching. I did an instructor training program. I started teaching, and that's kind of how it all began and developed. And I was never much of a person who was into competition, so the idea that I could perform and just kind of create and move and do what I want, and there not necessarily be a subjective thing on it was, really inspiring for me, and kind of opened up a lot of doors and a lot of different ideas. So that's kind of how I got into it at first. And when I first started, there wasn't much in terms of training. I actually started going from New York to Philadelphia to train out there before coming back to New York when some more places opened up. So now that it's become so accessible, it feels like you can kind of throw a coin and you'll hit some sort of aerial studio or fitness studio that has some sort of aerial integrated apparatus, whether it's a hammock for aerial yoga or actual, Lyra and silks and trapeze and things like that. It's great because people have access to it. But at the same time, you do have to kind of keep your eye out on quality. And I do think that there is a point where you really do have to pay attention to those things, like what it is that you're hanging from, who's doing the rigging, what are the safety protocols of the space that you're training in. For me personally, I generally won't hang from anything that has not been approved by a qualified circus rigger. And anytime I'm looking to buy equipment, I'm always getting an okay or a second opinion from somebody who is more qualified in that. And I wrote an article not too long ago about training independently. Because of the pandemic, there have been a lot of people who have opted to, I'm going to get my own rig, I'm going to do my own thing. But there's just a whole lot of things that you actually do have to take into consideration that you don't realize when you are training and learning within a space that business is structured to keep you safe, to be insured, to have proper instructors, to know how to instruct you properly and have protocols for if there is an emergency, because, the truth of the matter is what we do is often dangerous just inherently. So accidents happen even under the most qualified coach's eye. So, these are all things that I've been trying to get people to start to look deep into. And so anybody who is looking to seriously consider aerial in any form, whether it's I'm going to do it I'm going to try to do it in my own house with my own equipment, or going to a studio. In other studios, if you know these things, you can go to a studio and assess whether it's safe to train there. I generally do not advise people to train on their own, not unless they are essentially a professional. There's certain things that you need to be able to do, but for me, it's all about education. If you're going to do it, be educated about what it is you're hanging from, how to learn how to use your body properly, proper techniques, so that you don't injure yourself from, not firing the right muscles properly when, doing a skill. And then with the last part of your question was...
It was, do you feel like it's becoming easier in the circus arts for aerialists to be put in harm's way?
Yes. So with all of those things about, where you can train and its accessibility, you can go on Amazon and buy aerial equipment at this point, you know what I mean? So I think that there is a higher opportunity for people to be put in harm's way, especially if they aren't educated. And that includes the person partaking in the activity, as well as the people who are offering out the activity, or the studios that are offering out the activities, or the, venue that is looking to have an aerialist. It's really being mindful about that, and listening to the experts and the professionals, and just understanding that with any class, any acrobatic or aerial class, you sign a waiver, right? You sign a waiver of risk of injury and even possibly death. That doesn't go away when you're not just signing. This doesn't just go away, but it's all mitigated by being responsible, training properly, having a good coach, good mentor to guide you through things. So for me, I do see that as being a problem. And my answer to that is just trying to educate people and give people as much information as possible, so that they can make smart, educated decisions that involve their own safety. Everybody is responsible for their own safety, and that's seen in who you choose to take class with, where you go, and what you do with your body. So I always find the more you let yourself learn about things, get a book about rigging, get yourself educated, and don't just think that you can just kind of pop on an apparatus and it's easy, right? So I like to hope that people will, that people, as things grow, that people will grow with quality. And if there isn't quality, that people are called out on it, and that people are able to see the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that education, Summer. Summer, you've traveled all over. Where has been your favorite space to perform, and what type of shows do you love performing in the most?
Let's see. So, it's interesting. I think everything has its own special thing I like about it and special thing I don't like about it. I guess for me, like a show that is kind of stays in one place for a bit and then moves is kind of like my ideal situation. I actually prefer being part of a full production where, I have an aerial solo or feature act of some sort, but can also be integrated within a whole show or whole production. So I'm not just doing my act and then that's it, but actually being part of the development process and being part of an ensemble and being able to create a narrative through more than just my act. So I tend to like those the most. I also do enjoy the like dinner theater variety shows as well. Because you can kind of like you come, you do your act, and then it's all you really have to worry about at the time. In terms of where, I think that my travels with the Zool Dance Company are probably one of my best experiences. I've gone with them to Mexico to perform, and it's always been great. Like the process is usually always great, and that's another show that I guess I probably like that show a lot because I forced myself to kind of step out of my comfort zone and do a lot more actual dancing on my feet as opposed to dancing in the air. So I think that actually had a lasting impact on how I feel about my performance and performing with them. And Javier Zool, who is the artistic director of the company, has such beautiful vision, and he has such a beautiful set of cast and dancers that it's just like that. It's like, again, it's another one of those family, like the people I work with are my family sort of situation. So I think that kind of like hits the type of performance and the location. But I've done so much, and everything kind of has its own like special place. And I've even done a lot of event entertainment work as well, which is the side of circus that's not necessarily like a show per se, but you create what essentially can sometimes be for a private event or a corporate event, a mini show, or you do your act, or you create a environment or an installation of circus performance within the context of an event or a product launch or something. So I also find that work really interesting when you have the when I'm given the creative the creative pen to kind of like step outside of just ambiance.
Thank you for that breakdown. How do you exist simultaneously as a graphic designer and circus artist? You must be a promotional and marketing genius with having such amazing skills. How do you adapt your design skills to amplify your career as a circus artist, Summer?
A lot of it has helped me in terms of building promotional marketing materials and even understanding how to sell and act. And this is actually a thing that is, there's the creative aspect and the art aspect of creating a show. And then there's the idea of creating an act or a show meant to sell or meant to be for a particular audience. So my experience in design and marketing has really helped me to kind of see that aspect in performance. And I feel like has helped me to even really think about when I do auditions, like how I present myself at an audition, or even how I present the narrative of what I do at an audition, how I set up my resume. Like when I was working at Marvel, look, I was looking at a lot of resumes. And so I had this experience of like having to, funnel through hundreds of resumes to find somebody who would be able to like work and assist me. And just even being able to like think about what people go through when they're looking through resumes or looking through portfolios, while it's not necessarily exactly the same as like what a casting director may do per se, but the fact that like I can define, well, this is the important information I want whoever is seeing this resume to like get this information first without having to like actually really look very hard at it. And the same thing with portfolio is like being able to showcase a specific thing, even for specific audition. So I will often have like 5 different reels and 5 different kind of resume setups depending on what it is that I'm trying to, pitch or audition for. So that I'm always showcasing the thing that is most in line with the thing that I'm trying to get, so that that connection is made like right away, and that whoever is looking at it doesn't have to look very hard to get the information that they would need to decide whether they want to hire me or not, or want to put me, down or not. So I find that that's been really helpful, and I am trying to use some of that information to even help some of my professional track students. I've done some workshops on building, your website. So having a professional website, and even how you want to set yourself up so that anybody who does go to your website really gets the narrative that you want them to read about you and your work. As well as how to stand out. And again, this kind of comes back to my mission statement of like, there's a million dancers, there's a million acrobats, there's a million aerialists, and there's likely going to be a million other people who do the same thing as you and may do it even just technically better. But there's only you. There's only one you. And what you bring to the table is the thing that you want to layer into your work. Because I want somebody to hire me. I want somebody to hire me to perform, not necessarily just a person to hang on a chain or do this skill on a hoop, right? So trying to take that knowledge that I guess was instilled in me in design school, and even just working as, a production manager and an art director in like my quote unquote previous life, being able to take that information and put it in a way that is helpful for what I do in circus and what I can give to my students to help them do well in their careers. Yeah.
That's brilliant, Summer. Just brilliant. Summer, is there a project that you are working on currently that you are excited about and want to share with listeners?
I have so many kind of projects going on that seems so surprising in the fact that everything is kind of stopped. Right now, like I had to put a hold on, booking my aerial acts. Like, I would book for event entertainment, before everything shut down. So what I was kind of talking about, working within an event space, that's kind of been put on hold. But a project that I was actually working on right when everything shut down, I was hired in a starring role and as the aerial choreographer for a show called Breaking Glass, which was set to open up in May 2020. And that show in particular was this piece that examines the struggles that, women are confronted with when in power situations, and is using dance and aerial and acrobatics to kind of carve out that visual narrative. And we were, again, set to open the show in May, but, everything got shut down. So I'm currently still working with a creative team. We're still working on trying to bring the show to the stage at some point in the future. So that is one thing that's kind of like, we're not sure how it's going to go, but seeing what's going to happen in the future, and whether, we're able to open when the world opens back up, or whether we have to find a virtual medium to do it. That's something cool that I feel like I'm working on. I also have another project that is with a bunch of amazing artists of color that I'm really excited about, and I'm really hoping to be able to build something with them and bring that to the stage when the world opens up as well. And then other than that, I'm, doing some design here or there, and doing my donation-based, conditioning and flexibility classes. So all of those things I am very excited for.
Beautiful. Lastly, Summer, what do you want to say to the circus world at large? What keeps you going in your career that you feel could keep others going as well? Is there a personal self-care strategy that you utilize to stay healthy and motivated in this business?
So I think the one thing that actually it's not even one thing, but a general idea kind of comes back to the gratitude, kind of taking auditing all of the things that you do have, and being grateful for those things, and trying to use that to stay positive. I find mindset is really a thing that allows people to move forward and not get stuck. I've been fortunate enough to kind of be able to kind of tackle all the things that I wanted to do in life, and have relatively decent success at it. And I feel that if I could do that, then anybody can. So I would inspire and encourage anybody with a dream that's willing to do the work and put in the time to go for it, despite any perceived limitations, race, body type, sex, disability, gender, all of that. Like, if you feel passionate about something, and again, you're willing to do the work, you can make those things happen. There's work out there for you, even if that means you have to build that work for yourself. Mindset is, again, key. Like, keep your mind open to positive things. There's two different ways that you can, I think there's many different ways you can see the world. Like, you can go through the exact same day, make note of every horrible thing that happened that day, you trip down the stairs, you blah, 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 and then go through that same day, picking out all of the positive things that have happened. I spoke to your best friend, or, you ate that really good pie. Like, those are, if you pick all the negative things, everything you see and everything that will happen in the future will be negative. But if you kind of think about those positive things, you're more likely to be able to hit that target on the things that you want to do. And in order for me to kind of keep that, it sounds really nice on paper to be like, yay, positivity, optimism. But, sometimes you get down. And for me, giving myself the okay to feel my feelings, I think, is important. So, if sometimes I'll just be like, I'm tired. I don't know. I'm tired. I can't deal with all this crazy stuff that's happening. I give myself the space to be okay in those feelings. And then I try to move on as quickly as I can. I use a lot of self-care in terms of, before everything shut down, I used to like make sure I got massages, made sure I like gave myself the time to actually relax. Meditation is another good self-care thing that I'm honestly terrible at, but just being able to kind of like clear your mind even for 5 minutes really does like so much good. I also like spend a lot of time on skincare, and like at the end of every day, I have like a 10-step skincare routine that for most people seems like a little over the top, but I actually use that as like a meditative, like I'm turning everything off, I'm closing up for the day, and it becomes a very relaxing, meditative thing for me. And then it actually just, makes me feel good. So I think a lot of those small things, help me in my self-care. As far as body goes, massage, I've got like massage guns, and I'm always trying to do best for my body. And especially now, since I can't really do much, I've been just letting my body rest, rebuilding it, and I actually feel better than I have in a very long time, just because I'm not like pounding my physical body with so much physical exertion between performing and teaching. So give yourself the time for self-care. It really does wonders for the body as well as for the mind.
Thank you so much, Summer, for coming onto the show. You are as light and bright as your name suggests, and I appreciate the many facets of circus entrepreneurship that you have cultivated over the years. It's clear that you have and continue to elevate your presence in the arts and entertainment by way of your impeccable savviness as a self-made woman of color. I celebrate your career, and I wish you continued elevation within all that you put into the world in the many spheres that you've managed so inspiringly to cast yourself into. I see you. I recognize your grace, fierceness, tenderness, humanity, and overall captivating presence within the circus arts, and I wish you and your family continued health and continued safety, Summer.
Thank you so much. It's been, again, a real honor to speak with you and share on your platform. You're doing amazing things. I'm so excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, where I interviewed aerialist Summer Lacy about her inspiringly positive perspectives on the circus arts and life itself. The Live Like an Acrobat podcast is also available now on Circus Talk, the inclusive, independent, and international online network for the circus industry. Circus Talk's mission is to create a level playing field for this industry and democratize access to information. To close the show, I wanted to send love to all of the first responders that have so courageously fought the fires and assisted in evacuations in Northern California, some of whom are family members and close friends. I send compassion to all of the victims affected by the fires who have lost everything. I send you love and recovery. Please consider donating to a cause in connection with the Northern California fires. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto, and until next time, please stay safe and stay healthy.